Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Pete's CD and Vinyl World. Today I just want to do a quick video to celebrate the 80th birthday of Ringo Starr. So yeah, it's a pretty big milestone for him for a lot of reasons. And also because I think he's the first of that generation of bands, first person that's turning 80 as far as I know. I think Paul's 78, and Charlie Watts is up there too. He might be 78 or 79. I don't think he's 80 yet, so I'm pretty sure Ringo is the first one from the 60s to turn 80, which is crazy to think about. But I just want to talk about a couple things. A lot of people don't realize how good of a drummer Ringo is. He was really focused on playing for the song rather than being a flashy drummer. And when you think about it, he was really the first rock and roll drummer, as far as that's my opinions. The early rock and roll, Buddy Holly, Elvis, Chuck Berry, the drummer was just there to keep the beat. With Ringo, it was almost a featured instrument, especially in the early days, like up through even later on, but especially when before they were moved on from Revolver to, say, Sergeant Pepper, their drums were almost as loud as the vocals if you listen to the early Beatles. I think it might have been an accident because George Martin, I don't think produced really rock music or music in general. I thought he had done some like comedy albums, and he was just sort of a staff producer at EMI and just was assigned the Beatles. So maybe he didn't know what he was even doing, but I guess he came up with a sound that he liked. But if you listen to those early Beatles albums, or even watch clips of them on TV or YouTube, and I mean the drums are right up front there with the vocals. This was before the Beatles started using like sort of semi-distorted guitar tones on some of their later work. The guitars were real clean in the beginning, so the drums really stood out. You can hear that ride cymbal and that snare drum no matter what. And obviously he influenced the generation of drummers strictly because he was in the Beatles, but also his playing style, I think, really was at the forefront of each band member of a band, mattering. Before the Beatles, it was like, Buddy Holly and the Crickets, Bill Haley and the Comets, Johnny and the Vibrators, or whoever. The musicians were just sort of like in the background. The Beatles were the first real band where each guy mattered. So after that, Charlie Watts and Keith Moon and then John Bonham, all these guys influenced drummers everywhere. So I guess what I wanted to say was, it's going to be in the next 10 years or so, a lot of these guys we're really going to start losing our heroes, really. So a little bit of background. I've always been a Beatles fan ever since I was a little kid. My parents were Beatles fans. They're probably the one band that my parents and I have in common. My parents are more into like the 50s crooners, and like my mom's a Tom Jones fan, and my dad likes Dion and doo-wop. So the Beatles were really like the one rock band where we all liked. And my mom actually saw the Beatles at Shea Stadium. So that's sort of her claim to fame. But yeah, so even when I was a little kid, even throughout, in the 70s, I guess Paul was the one who sort of kept the Beatles alive, in a sense, from having all those hits with Wings. Well, Ringo too, because he had a lot of hits in the 70s. But the Beatles, I think, were always in every decade after, 70s, 80s, 90s to 2000s, they were still one of the most popular bands out there. Even bands that break up, have a resurgence maybe 10, 20 years later, the Beatles were always popular. So yeah, so that's really what I wanted to say. Also, you know, even on this album, Plastic Ono Band, that he played on from John Lennon, there isn't much as far as instrumentation on this album. It's almost just vocals, piano, drums, vocals, piano, guitar. And even on this album, the drums are mixed pretty loud. And when I listen to this album, you really focus on the drums with the vocals, not so much the guitar and piano. So, and it was cool that all these guys, you know, played on Ringo's albums. Even to this day, his last album, Paul McCartney played on. But throughout the 70s, you know, Paul, John, and George all did stuff for Ringo's albums. They never did anything together, unfortunately, but almost had these little mini reunions on all the Ringo albums in a way. So I don't own any Ringo albums, but after seeing Mazzy's video yesterday about Ringo Starr, I didn't realize that some of his albums are actually considered really good. I always kind of thought that his, you know, from the songs I know from him, Photograph and It Don't Come Easy, that his solo career was sort of like schlocky or a joke. But I guess I should probably check out some of his stuff. Guess that's all I wanted to say. Anyway, please wish Ringo a happy 80th. And hopefully have another video up in a day or two. So talk to you guys soon. Bye.